Rabbi Gedak asked me to give an 8-minute shiur on the entire Sefer Yehoshua, so we'll see how well we do together. I cannot give this overview without thanking Rabbi Menachem Liebtag, a person who put a passion for Tanakh in general in me, as well as I use his notes that are found on Tanakh.org in preparation for the shiur. And the significance of taping this shiur, Yom Ha'atzmaut 5773, is certainly not lost on me. Sefer Yehoshua is not a chronicle or a history book. It's a prophetic book with a prophetic message. The important message for Bnei Yisrael 3,300 years ago, and for every generation since, is God kept His promise. Parenthetically, the message for Shoftim is what the consequences are when Bnei Yisrael do not keep their side of the agreement. In order to figure out if God kept His promise, we need to know what was they agreed upon. What did God promise? Did God promise to gift Bnei Yisrael the entire land? In fact, the deal or brit went something like this. If you follow my laws and take initiative in conquering the land, in return, I will help and by putting the fear in the locals and do a lot more to help win every battle. The mivneh, or structure of the Sefer, is easy to remember. The book has 24 chapters. Chapter 1 through 12 is the Yerusha. Chapters 12, the other half, chapter 12 through 24, is the Nachala. Let me explain. Chapters 1 through 12, the conquering, can be further divided into two parts. 1 through 5, the preparation for the battle, and chapters 6 through 12, the actual battles, ending appropriately with a song celebrating the victory over 31 kings. Sefer Yehoshua is a continuation of the Bible in many, many ways. One is the transition of leadership. Yehoshua takes over for what God said was the greatest Navi of all time. Very big sandals to fill. Other links to Chumash, going back to Bereshis, Avram's first stop in Canaan is Shechem, where he builds a Mizbeach several hundred years, Several hundred years later, Bnei Yisrael in Egypt do Brit Milah, and on the 10th of Nisan start the process involving the Korban Pesach. A week after they left Egypt, they fight Amalek, and are only victorious when reminded of Hashem by Moshe's hands. From there they marched to Sinai to enter a Brit with Hashem. Had it not been for the Egel, the next stop would have been Eretz Canaan. We're going to hit each one of these stops in our way through looking deeply at Sefer Yehoshua. Not many dates are recorded in Tanakh, but the date that several million of Bnei Yisrael crossed the Jordan is. The Jordan was split on the 10th of Nisan, just in time for Brit Milah and Korban Pesach, as their parents and grandparents did. From the start, Yehoshua does take the initiative with sending 2 spies to scout Jericho. He does not seem to even know about the miracle of Jericho. The spies go on a military mission and report that God's promise has been kept. The people are indeed scared. An important question to keep in mind as we learn through the Sefer is, did God do the miracles, or did Yehoshua cause them to happen by taking the initiative, for example, in this case, by sending the spies? Parenthetically, the roles of the Kohanim and the Aron in crossing the Jordan River, as well as the Milah and Korban Pesach once they crossed, must have had a very strong impression on these soldiers. A malach, as promised in Parshas Mishpatim, greets Yehoshua, and like at the burning bush, instructs Yehoshua to take off his shoes in preparation for a nevuah from Hashem. The theme of 7 in the Battle of Jericho is to show Hashem, the Creator, owns and controls all. As the first battle, it is the Reshit, the first, like a Bechor. What's the Bechor? The firstborn Jew, animal, or kosher animal, or donkey, that is holy to God. And to show that it's holy to God, all the booty went to him. Let's go a little bit further. In a war, the booty goes to the winning fighter. That is who the booty goes to in the Battle of Jericho. This key point we'll return to when explaining the Battle of Ai. So the Battle of Jericho was successful on many levels. The city was taken, Rachel was saved by staying indoors like Bnei Yisrael during Makos Bechoros, and God gets the booty and the credit. But we are told, right after this battle, that Bnei Yisrael did Me'ilah. They stole holy money. And we are told who it was, and that God was angry, but we're not told anything was done about it. For the next battle, Yehoshua sends spies again. The spies are told that this is going to be an easy battle. So therefore Yeshua sends a few thousand to battle. 36 are killed, which is a huge tragedy, certainly taken by them, and Bnei Yisrael run away. So what exactly happened? Well, one man was to blame, Achan, and he was stoned. But why did an entire nation suffer? Why did 36 people have to die? Well, this was no ordinary me'ilah. The booty that he stole from the cherem, the holy cherem of Yericho, was holy not to God because he needed the cash. It was to symbolize that God had done the fighting. By taking the booty, Achan was saying, I did the fighting as well. So now to answer our question. The spies came back overconfident. A few thousand people cannot take a walled city. Achan was just a symptom of the overall overconfidence in themselves. Kochi ve'otzim yadi. The second battle plan was a battle plan as per God. Therefore, it was a masterful plan. The entire army was to face off against the walled city of Ai, with the exception of 5,000 people waiting in ambush. The army starts to fight. The entire Jewish people pretends, the army of Ai comes out and greets them. The Jewish army flees. Once drawn from the city, Yeshua raises his hand with a javelin in it, and that's the sign. The 5,000 that are lying in ambush goes in and torches the city. The entire army turns around to see their city being burnt, and the rest you can figure out. So did Bnei Yisrael learn their lesson from Kochi Otzim Yadi, their overconfidence, that they thought they were the true victors in Yericho and not attributing the victory to God? So let's point out a few things that shows that they indeed did learn their lesson. When Yeshua stretched out his arms, it seems like yes, they were thinking of Hashem as their fathers did when Amalek under Yeshua with Moshe's raised hands. The next stop at Shechem was retracing Avram's first stop, showing that they remember the original intent of the Brit and the renewal of their vows, Allah Mamad Har Sinai. By going to Shechem and Harival and building a Mizbeach, it is outside the scope of the shiur to discuss a three-way machlokes when exactly this happened. Did this happen immediately the day that they entered the land when they crossed the Jordan River? Did it happen now, or did it happen at the end of the Sefer? The last sign that shows that children learned their lesson and they learned from their mistake was making a brit with the Givonim. But some background information is needed, and let me explain. Bnei Yisrael, with God on their side, are a very impressive invading army. Upon entering the land, Yeshua's two greatest military fears were the kings of Canaan ganging up on Bnei Yisrael and gaining not just a home field advantage, but a numerical advantage as well. This has been avoided until now. The other fear was a battle against a walled city or a siege. Bnei Yisrael did not have the time, resources for this, and it would leave them sitting ducks for the other kings to join in. See fear number one. Because of Yeshua's initiative, God made a miracle to avoid a siege in Yericho, and because of the tshuva that Bnei Yisrael did, their Department of War, i.e. God, made a battle plan to avoid a frontal attack against the walled city of Ai. We find ourselves at the start of chapter 9 in the Sefer, and many kings are now gathering to fight Bnei Yisrael, Yeshua's greatest fear. At that time, one group comes and says, we come from far, far away, and for the sake of God's name, we want to make a treaty with you. We heard about his reputation and everything that your God has done in Egypt. Well, on a high from their ceremony in Shechem, they quickly made a treaty with these travelers in the spirit of fulfilling the mission they had just renewed. It was a messianic moment. Not to be anachronistic, but see Yeshaya and Zechariah when the accepting of the other nations of God is a fulfillment of everything that they were taught in Sefer Dvarim. To make a long story short, Bnei Yisrael were conned. They were fooled. The Givonim were not from a distant land, but they broke from the coalition that were amassing against Bnei Yisrael. Looking at a map, Givon was the next city to be attacked. Perhaps they felt the coalition would not gather in time. Militarily speaking, this mistake was the best thing that could possibly happen. The Canaan coalition, or at least 5 of them, gathered to attack against Givon for making a treaty with this invading army. Yehoshua, like a good chess player, made them pay for their mistake and attacked them outside of their cities, outside of their walled cities. The battle was going so well that he asked God for more daylight hours to continue the assault so they did not have to return to their walled cities at night. Shemesh be'givon dom v'yorech be'emek ayalon. God did this and provided artillery support in the name of flying boulders. Another way of looking at Yeshua's support for the Givonim was just as they just made a brit with God in chapter 8, and that they were going to keep it, so too the brit in chapter 9 with the Givonim, and they were going to keep it even if it meant going to battle against the Canaanim. There was a battle against the northern kingdom where Yeshua, like Israel in 1967, knocked out Egyptian air forces before the war began. Here Yeshua maimed the horses and burned the chariots before the battle begun. Now the heart of the country, the major east-west and north-south highways are conquered. It was up to each Shevet to take their own initiative. That takes place in the second half of the Sefer. Pro tip, if you're reading Sefer Yehoshua for the amazing battles and the miracles, each and every word is from a Navi, but skip chapters 13 through 19. It's a list of cities, but let's see if there's something there we can glean. Chapters 13 through 17 show the tribes that took the initiatives and were successful. There were 5 of them. Chapters 18 and 19 were the remaining 7 tribes. And finally, the Ministry of Education, the Levite cities, were set up in chapters 21 and 22. The rest of chapter 22 contains an important lesson in running an investigation. Ask questions first before you go in with the heavy arms. And finally, the closing speeches. And with that, I will close. There's 2 closing speeches. One of them is very much related to what happens in chapter 8, and perhaps it was put here because thematically it really fits very nicely. The most surprising thing that we find in the closing speech is Yeshua actually gives Bnei Yisrael a choice. Do you indeed want to remain Jewish? Lastly, I just want to end by saying God does indeed keep his end of the Brit, that he helps them as long as they take their initiative. Unfortunately, 7 tribes do not do everything they can to conquer their own territory. Is it possible that Yeshua died without naming a successor? He followed in Moshe's footsteps in so many ways, and Moshe is very careful to name a successor. Is it possible that either Othniel ben Kenaz was the successor, and Othniel ben Kenaz could not keep it going, or perhaps Othniel ben Kenaz lost before it even started because he didn't have a land in back of him? Thank you very much.